Hello, everyone. I'm Viraj Bhardwaj, the host of this Cosmos Chat podcast. And today with me is Jin Sing Sia. And first of all, I want him to introduce himself.
Thanks, Viraj. My name is Jin. I'm a master's student studying electrical engineering and planetary sciences at the University of Western Ontario in Canada, but I'm actually originally from Malaysia. And other things I do is I'm also on the board of directors for the Mars Society of Canada, where I act as the Chief Diversity Officer. And I'm also part of the Space Kind training run by Loretta Whitesides.
Great. and so today we are going to talk about Mars. Mars is a planet which always excites us. And, there's a space going for the Mars, and all the space agencies around the world are working for it, as we all know. So, first of all, I just want to know, Jane, that how you got your interest in space and astronomy, and why you are so much interested in the planet Mars.
That's a good question. So the way I got interested in space was it's an interesting story. My mom read to me a lot as a kid from various books. And one day she read me a book about space. And for some reason that just triggered something in me that it got me obsessed with space for the rest of my life. And then later, as I got older, I became interested in Mars because it seemed like the logical next step for human exploration after exploring the moon. And I read a book called The Case for Mars by Robert Zubrin, which essentially outlines the concepts and engineering of how we could actually build a human expedition to Mars and how we could live there in a way that's actually could be done with current technology. And that book really inspired me to make Mars my goal. Because I think it's going to be the first step to the rest of the solar system for humankind. And that book really got me started with my involvement with the Mars Society. And also it inspired me to become an engineer.
Great. And why are you so much interested into Mars, like the planet Mars? You are the chief diversity officer, board of directors too, and Mars Society of Canada. I have read about it, and you suggested this topic for our podcast. And for this, I can, like, from all these things, I can assume that you are really excited. You are really excited about the future of Mars and about Mars and its colonization and all the things. So, why you are so much interested in Mars? Why do you think it's a planet of through which you are really connected?
I think that Mars is probably it's kind of like how the moon was our first step into interplanetary space. And I think Mars is just that logical next target because it's so similar to Earth, but still different enough to be interesting. And it's because it's not too difficult to access from Earth. And there's actually the possibility that the conditions could allow us to actually live on Mars one day or to explore it for long periods of time. And so Mars just has this tantalizing, this just because there's so much we could learn about Mars, about the way that life got started in the solar system, and just the opportunity to expand the human experience into space. Mars provides that platform. It's the idea of walking on a world where no one has ever gone before just really appeals to me. And I think for our generation, Mars is going to be the big step for us, the big contribution we make to human history.
Yes, sure. I completely agree with you too. And I am really much interested in Mars, and it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So there's a race going to Mars, and all the space agencies like NASA and we can take SpaceX are working to do something on Mars, some type of colonization. We don't know whether we are going to, we humans have our passion, and we can achieve anything just with our hard work, just with our passion, and nothing is impossible for us, as much I believe, and all the futurists out there like Elon Musk. And so just I want to know that what do you think about this race to Mars? And do you think that going to Mars is a good idea?
Well, I definitely think that going to Mars is a good idea. I think it'd be strange to be part of the Mars Society if I didn't think that going to Mars was a good idea. But I'm guessing you want to know why I think going to Mars is a good idea. So generally, I think exploration is just so much of a part, so much as a core part of our nature, the curiosity to know what's out there. And in terms of exploring other planets, there is just so much you can do with humans that robots can't. The one thing that planetary geologists try to replicate when they design a robot to go to Mars is that they try to equip it with all the senses that a human geologist would have. Like the Perseverance rover has a set of cameras which act as eyes. It has a robotic arm that acts as like how a human arm would, and it's also mobile to go across the surface. But even with all of this highly advanced equipment, it can't really compare to just walking on Mars and actually being there and just taking a look at everything around you. And human explorers are, with just their eyes, hands, and feet, are going to be so much more capable than robots. It's been said that I think what would take a robot 2 days, a human could probably do in 20 minutes. For example, so much of what we know about Mars relies on image taken by satellites orbiting it. And this essentially, but this means they can only capture the surface of of Mars. You can't tell what's even 1 centimeter below the surface. And so for a rover or a lander, for example, the InSight probe was trying to detect the heat flow from inside Mars and try to drill a hole into Mars. But because the mechanism actually failed and they couldn't dig deep enough. Or for example, with Perseverance, you have to very carefully plan out the arm movements to excavate soil. All of this these operations that took weeks or months to plan out could be done by a human with a shovel in about 5 minutes, and it could dig a lot deeper, and a lot more effectively. I think also with Mars, just it opens up so many possibilities for the rest of the solar system. Mars is a potential place for where humans could live. It's a potential, and even if we decide not to live there after all, just the challenge and the things that we'll have to think up of and invent, and the experience that we'll gain in terms of going to Mars and exploring it, is going to really set the foundation for what we need to live permanently in space. And I think that that's the real goal here. We want to open up a cosmic future in space for humanity. And that's really what's important here, because it will open up a huge diversity of possibilities for the human future, and also make us much more resilient against cosmic disasters, because the universe is an unforgiving place. And it's by spreading out into space, we are able to make ourselves more resilient, and we're able to make more lives and better lives for everyone. That's my belief. And I think I might have missed a part of your question. Could you please talk about what I haven't answered yet?
And like I asked too that what do you think about the race to Mars? Like any
Yes.
ideas, any views and all the things.
It's interesting because in the Cold War era, it was mostly just the US against the Soviet Union. But now we have the Artemis Accords for the main target's the moon right now, of course. But the idea, the long-term strategic goal is supposed to be that the Artemis missions will set the foundation for how to live a long time in space, which will help us go to Mars. And I imagine a lot of the Artemis Accord missions would probably be involved in the human Mars expedition. So it's interesting because now we have such a large coalition of different nations, not just the US and Europe, but also nations like Australia, which are emergent into the space industry. Or if I remember correctly, I think the UAE might also be a part of the Artemis Accords now. So we're seeing a huge opening up the opportunity for less traditional nations to participate in the exploration of space. But of course, geopolitically, we know that they are really in opposition to Russia and China, which are also working together to do their own moon exploration efforts. And I'm supposing to explore Mars on their own as well. China's had great success in exploring Mars with their orbiters and their rovers. And I think this makes me feel a bit uneasy that this geopolitical competition is happening, because when we explore space, I think it should be for all humankind, whether they're American or whether they're German or Russian or Chinese or Indian. And so I hope that this space race becomes more about healthy competition, sort of like, SpaceX competing against Blue Origin to provide better launch services. and not about political competition like the US and the Soviet Union, who were trying to kill each other. So that's trying to promote that human understanding and breaking borders is something that I try to do in my decisions as Chief Diversity Officer at the Mars Society of Canada. It's one of the few things that I really want to see change in the next few years.
I totally agree with you. And even countries are really excited, are really interested into this planet Mars. Like even India, who was not in the condition of launching any satellite or something else, but they made a satellite. You can say a probe named Mars Orbiter Mission. The name of the mission was Mars Orbiter Mission, and it was launched in 2014. And it was really difficult for for India at that time, but they still did it, and it clearly shows that how much we are interested you know in in the planet Mars, like the perseverance rover. You can see these are the things which clearly shows that we humans are really much interested and excited about the future of the Mars too. And like whenever we talk about Mars or something else, one thing usually comes in our mind, the colonization of Mars. And there are a number of theories which are being given by, you can say, experts and all, about how we can colonize Moon. Some says that nuking the Mars could be a way, and some also says, like, a glass dome could be a way. So
Mhm.
what do you think, like how can we colonize Mars, and what are the various dangers? Obviously dangers and obstacles will come in our way. So what are they? And if there are some ways to tackle them, or if there are some proposed ways to, like, if we are working on them, can you please elaborate this whole topic?
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to address is the word to colonize Mars. I think that we need to start having a different conception for how we're going to go to Mars, because when we say the word, because so much in the space community, the default word to use is the word colonize. Let's colonize the moon, let's colonize Mars. But I'm trying to see if there's something different that could use the word, because when you say colonize, it brings back it recalls the history of how historically the Western powers have gone into other countries and felt entitled to other people's land and resources. For example, you're from India, I'm from Malaysia. We were both colonized by the British up until very recently, and and we, that means that our ancestors were exploited and they were divided for the benefit of other people. And so when we say the word colonization, it's kind of a loaded word. And especially in the West, in the US and Canada, when we talk about colonizing Mars, um, the most word that's often what people often draw an analogy to is the colonization of the Americas, of Turtle Island, as the indigenous calls it, which was a process where the indigenous people were systematically displaced and where they were killed and murdered for their land. And it comes into a whole structure of how we explore space that kind of limits our thinking into to the ways that we could live in space, or the ways that could treat the land. So I think one potential weakness of thinking using the word colonization is that I've noticed that in space conferences I've been to, I recently went to the Space Generation Fusion Forum, and I was participating in a breakout room about sustainable usage of the moon. And I noticed that the way that we talked about the moon, saw it only as a repository of resources, nothing more than that. Even though the moon has so much cultural significance to so many cultures on Earth, basically to every human culture on Earth, the moon is culturally significant. And I fear that the way we've treated Earth, which is to only think about in the short term, to only think about extracting as much as possible, and to only think about growing as much as possible. If we take this into space, I fear that we will live in space in a way that's also unsustainable, and that replicates the way that we exploit humans on Earth. So I think that's a major thing that we should correct now, because we're going to go to Mars soon. I believe that. which I think makes it all the more critical that we start thinking about alternative ways that we could look at the resources of the moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt, and of the Earth itself. And I think if we can rethink the way to that we permanently live in space, we can break free of the history of the exploitative history that we have, that's affected all of us. And that way we can really have a much better future in space. And what do you think about that?
Obviously, because you know, we like we in on Earth we did so wrong to it,
Mhm.
and in case of Mars we don't have to do it. We have
Yeah.
to learn from our mistakes, and as you said, Malaysia, India, and all, there were some countries that you know were treated as a colonies by Britishers, by Western
Mhm.
powers. But yes, we don't, we have to like just think of it, and we have to try to improve ourselves, and what mistakes we did in the past, like all the things which we did in past, we are struggling because of them. The global warming and many, there are many, we can't we just can't talk about them. And we are also depleting our natural resources on earth. But these are the things of which we should be careful on, on some another planets, because we are getting a chance by our technology to, to just improve all the things we did in the past. And a planet like Mars can be our next hope. That's
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that as people, as space people like us, we have a unique advantage is that because of the nature of how difficult travel is in space, we are accustomed to thinking long term. When you think about planning a mission to another planet, that's something that's a 20-year long process from proposing the mission to the end of the mission. And when we think about going to Alpha Centauri or to other the star systems, we have to think on scales of centuries, hundreds of years. And I think that the way that could really benefit us is to change that mindset, to think long term, to think about what were your great grandchildren, how would they live? And if we can bring that mindset back to Earth, we can really benefit and completely transform the way we operate. Because right now we just think about right now our governments just think about what's going to be viable for the next election term, when we should really be thinking, there's an indigenous group in this part of the world called the Haudenosaunee, and they live by what's called the 7 generations rule. The idea is that you should live in a way such that if you live like this for 7 generations, that seventh generation would still have an equal or better quality of life than what you do now. And I think, and right now, the way that the world's operating, we're not even in 1 generation, we're not going to be able to satisfy that. So I think we could extend it just both up to space and back down to Earth. We have like this new way of thinking that doesn't prioritize, just growing at all costs. I think that would make such a better future for everyone in space and on Earth in so many ways. And also, living in space is really, really difficult. I mean, I know you want to talk about the difficulties of living on Mars. Well, there's the fact that it takes several months to get there with the current technology. There's radiation, because Mars does not have a strong magnetic field to deflect it, and there's a very thin atmosphere, so there's no oxygen. If you went outside, you would not be able to survive for more than a few minutes. There's the fact that the gravity is low. There's the fact that you have very limited resources. There's no ecosystem. So if you wanted to grow food, you wanted to produce oxygen from plants, you would have to build that ecosystem yourself. So it's forcing us to get a very good understanding of ecosystems, a very good understanding of how to make a community strong that can resist these adversities. Because I think back to, back in 2020 when the pandemic started, and suddenly all the toilet paper was gone from the shelves, which meant that basically those who were the fastest, the strongest, and the wealthiest got all of the resources, leaving nothing for everyone else. And if we did that on Mars, that Mars habitat or that Martian city would die. And I was thinking, when I looked at those shelves, I think, this is not how Martians would behave. We would not, or they cannot behave that way, because if you want to survive in that environment, you have to think about your community. And so that's, I think, a major lesson that Martians can teach people who live back on Earth.
Absolutely right. And there are, as you talked about, there are many dangers which will came in our way if we are going to terraform, if we are going to live on Mars, and
Mm,
it's really really difficult. I know, like, we all know that living on some another planet is not an easy game. It's really difficult. But
mhm,
whenever we like sometimes like whenever whenever we see something regarding global warmings or all like webinars or something else, some people give an example of Mars. Like they say that Mars was a habitable planet like Earth, but now because of some problems, because of some issues there, uh, all the things just gone, and the condition got worse. Do you think that Mars was a habitable planet before in the past? Because we have also found some. We can say there are some hypotheses that says that there was liquid water on Mars, and still we are currently hoping to get some remains of it through our Perseverance rover. So, do you think that Mars was a habitable planet in the past, and also do you think that Earth will can become Mars, like can become like Mars in future?
that's a good question. So I've been doing my master's degree for about 9 months now, and I've had the chance to learn quite a bit about planetary sciences and to talk to planetary geologists. So from what I think, from the evidence that we can see, that there's so much evidence that once upon a time liquid water flowed on Mars. There are numerous examples of valleys, streams, all kinds of features that were clearly formed by water flow or some kind of liquid. So, and if it wasn't liquid water, it was probably glaciers that could have had water flowing underneath them. And we have evidence of that too. It's a geological feature called an S curve, which has been found on Mars. And so many of the signs point to Mars being once upon a time much wetter and having a much thicker atmosphere than it did today. I think the key question here is, how did life begin in the first place? The problem of abiogenesis. How did once on Earth, once upon a time there was no life, but now there is life. I think that's really the key question, the big unknown that will tell us whether it was possible for life to have formed on Mars a long time ago. Because if Mars was warm and wet, it had conditions that at least extremophiles, the very hardy bacteria on Earth, could survive in. And the problem is that Mars is much smaller than Earth was, so it ran out of heat it cooled off much more quickly, which meant that it stopped generating a magnetic field, and this allowed the sun to strip its atmosphere away and strip away its water, which is why it's now cold and dead. At least we think it's cold and dead. For all we know, there could be underground aquifers where life still persists. So I think if it is possible for if it were possible for life to form on Earth, there's probably a good possibility that it formed on Mars in the distant past too, but we just don't have any evidence to say yes or no yet. We just have a lot of strong indications, and maybe there could have been conditions favorable to life. And I really like the second question: could Earth become like Mars? Um, if I recall correctly, I think if Earth's magnetic field were to disappear one day, it would probably allow the sun to take away a lot of the atmosphere, but it would be much more slowly than it would happen much more slowly than it did for Mars, because Earth has a stronger gravity, so it's able to hold on to its atmosphere much more easily. What's probably more likely to happen is that as the sun evolves into a red giant over the next few billion years, that is probably what will cause the major changes in Earth's climate before this loss of its magnetic field happens. But I am not an expert on that, so don't quote me on that.
But an issue like that, and yes, um, Mars, there are many remains that, and some hypothesis uh, too, that says that Mars had some liquid water in the past, and it's believable. But still now we don't have any proper definition of life too, and also we don't
Yeah.
know how abiogenesis happened. So we can't say anything till now. But yes, our scientists and we people are currently working on all these things, and I hope that we will find something about all these things like the life, abiogenesis, and all the mysteries out there in future. So now, as you know, that NASA just sent the Perseverance rover on Mars, and
Mhm.
it created a very big hype in among the public, and all of them were really excited about it. And still, we are waiting to get a new discovery, to get a new news from NASA, uh, and about the Perseverance Mars rover. And we also got a news that perseverance had perseverance rover had a machine in it, somewhat can say a toaster like machine, a toaster sized machine, which can convert the carbon dioxide gas into oxygen gas. So these are some exciting things which which perseverance Mars rover have, and all the space lovers out there are really excited to get something from this rover, to get some new, you can say, discovery or some new remains from it. So what are your views about Perseverance Mars rover? Like, what do you think about it? What do you think about it?
So Perseverance is a very special Mars mission to me because it launched on my birthday on July 30th, 2020. And so I I really do love Perseverance, especially because it's so clear how much love the engineers put into building it. Do you remember what the parachute looked like when they shot a video looking upwards at the parachute as it deployed, and they hit a secret code in the parachute, and the secret code says in binary, "Dare mighty things." And I love that because it just captures the spirit of why are we why do we want to explore space at all? Why should we why do we want to do anything that's difficult? And it says the message is we should dare mighty things. And in terms of science, I was really excited about the experiment you're talking about, the MOXIE experiment, Mars oxygen something experiment. Um, but yes, taking the Martian atmosphere and converting it and extracting the oxygen from it is a really important technology, because that will allow us to live on Mars in a more permanent way. And that doesn't require us to bring as much resources from Earth. And this makes going to Mars and exploring Mars much easier, because now you don't have to bring everything with you. You can make some of what you need there. Sorry, you're saying something?
No, you continue.
Okay. But the other thing I'm really excited about is that Perseverance is going to be supporting a Mars sample return mission, the first ever Mars sample return mission in human history. And so it's going to go, it's right as we speak, it's collecting samples across Mars and it's caching them in sample tubes. And I believe in the 2030s, the European Space Agency will send a rover and an orbiter to come and pick up the samples, launch them back into orbit, and bring them back to Earth. And this is really important because it'll allow us to get a lot more information from Martian samples than we could if we just sent a rover or a lander there. Because the thing with sending a robotic mission um, sending a robotic mission and with doing your science there is that you're limited by what you thought to bring with you and what you can bring with you. So you can't bring the best of your equipment because it will probably be too heavy or too big. And you can't think of everything that you could possibly want to do, because in 10 years from now, maybe you thought of a new experiment you wanted to try, but you can't run it because you didn't send it on the rover. So with a Mars sample return, we get the ability where we can subject it to the best facilities we have on Earth. And if we think of some new experiment we want to try in 10 years, we can run it because we have the sample right here on Earth, which is really a big advantage of having those Apollo samples back from the moon. Even now, we are still thinking of new experiments to run on those samples, especially to help with the human return to the moon. So I think that's really, and also doing a Mars sample return helps us test out the architecture in miniature for how we're going to return humans from Mars one day when humans expeditions go there. So this is all so in this sense, Perseverance is really supporting a number of very pivotal technologies that we'll need in order to expand a human presence in space.
Absolutely right. Perseverance Mars rover is something that could really help us in it, and also the future missions of many space agencies out there. I'm really excited about them. And
Yeah.
just wanted to know, like, what are the works that Mars Society of Canada do regarding Mars, and what you are working, personally, what you are working on Mars, like any projects or anything, and what are the works which are done by Mars Society of Canada. I just want to know, like, I would like to know about it.
So the Mars Society of Canada is what we do as an organization is that we're advocating for the human exploration of Mars, and we're supporting all the initiatives and research that we need to do that. We do three main things. We do advocacy. So we advocate to the public, we advocate to decision makers as to why going to Mars is a good idea. We educate the public. We spread scientific knowledge and engineering knowledge, and we've done this through our blog. I've written a few of those articles myself explaining our concepts like astrodynamics and aerospace engineering to help show people this is how we can go to Mars, not just that it's a good idea. And we're also supporting research. So we are actively participate in research activities. For example, I was part of a project in late 2020 where we were researching how we could create Mars habitats using origami techniques. And actually, the person who was leading that project was a space architect named Astal Kacha. And she's actually a native from India who was studying in Canada as well. And so those are the main three activity themes that we do. And as for me personally, as a chief diversity officer, my passion is about making sure that when we go into space, it's a JEDI space, JEDI, just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive. Because I want to make sure that I want to make sure that Mars exploration doesn't just benefit one small group, that it benefits everyone. Everyone has a chance to take part. And that I think that by maintaining and growing our diversity, we become stronger as a species, as a civilization, as a community. And it just enriches our lives so much, and it is an opportunity for us to build a better future in space. And I think that through organizations like the Mars Society of Canada, we can make sure that this culture shift starts at the very beginning. So this is something that's been very important to me for all of my life, which is making sure that we keep advancing society into becoming more just, more equitable, more diverse, and more inclusive. As for the things I'm concretely doing, I've done a number of written articles. Last year I had the privilege of going on a Mars analog expedition. So I simulated being on a crewed Mars mission for 2 weeks as part of the Mars Desert Research Station Crew 228. And right now I'm helping to organize the Montreal Space Exploration Conference, which is going to be happening this November in Montreal, Canada, where we're going to be showcasing the best that Canada has to offer in space exploration, but also fostering international collaboration and student outreach. So that's what I've been up to.
Awesome. And Mars Society of Canada is doing awesome work, I must say. And educating people is one thing that I really like. And there are many people out there, space lovers, science lovers, which really wants to know more about all these topics, all these things. And I'm really grateful to all those science communicators out there. They who are just on the mission to promote science in the whole world, just for pure science communication. And now it's time for for our traditional question. What do you think about the future of space and astronomy, and especially now about Mars? Because thinking like how that colony, how the people on Mars will look like, how their governments, how their work will go. These are some fascinating things that it's really fun to just think about them, just imagine all those things, and especially the future of humanity too, because there are going to be many things. There are very futurist people out there which are just imagine that which are just who are just imagining all those things which are going to be in future, and they are just writing about articles that we are going to develop this, like how the world will look like, this how will the world look like in 2050 or 2070 or like that. And these are some articles which I really like to read, and also some videos to see about the future of humanity. So in this episode we are going to talk about the future of Mars, and I would really love to know your views, your imagination regarding the future of Mars.
It's hard because now the industry is changing so fast. We can't even predict what will happen in 5 years. So, but I think in 100 years, I think we will probably have people living on Mars in 100 years, given by the pace that things are going at right now. If we choose if we choose to keep going into space. That's the important thing. We have to choose to do this. This is not something that will happen by itself. And that's why I'm a part of the Mars Society of Canada, because I think we need to shift the public consciousness in order to choose to go into space. That's like with the lunar program, John F. Kennedy at his speech at Rice University said, we choose to go to the moon. And just with our life, as with our lives, we have to take agency for what we do. Like if we choose to go into space, I think we'll definitely have people living on Mars in 100 years, but not just on Mars, but also throughout space, in perhaps in space habitats. And we will have, and my hope is that we'll have thriving communities in space that have grown past the problems that we see in our world today, and that are teaching Earth how to be better as a community, as a society. And I don't know if we will terraform Mars actually, because maybe with the way that we have learned to live in space, maybe we will decide that we don't need to terraform Mars. Maybe humans will have become so well adapted to living in space that maybe the gravity is not a problem for us anymore. So I think in the short term, we are probably not going to be living permanently on Mars yet. I don't think we have the technology or the expertise for that. But in 100 years, really anything could happen. And I think the important part is that we will have we all have so greatly enriched the human story by doing so. And we are definitely and I think we're definitely in for a bright future if we choose to go down this path.
Absolutely right. It's really difficult to talk about the future of anything, of any field, no matter it's medical and all the things. It's really it's really hard to predict all those things which are going to be in future, because as you said, we are working at a really great speed, and we don't know what is going to be happening in future. But yes, just imagining about them could just satisfy our curiosity.
Mhm.
So it was fun to talk with you, and and we all got to know many things about planet Mars, and also what are the things which we are doing wrong on Earth, and what are the things on which we humans should work on Earth too, and also in respect to Mars too, and also the future of Mars and humanity. I hope you also enjoyed it, right?
I love being on the podcast. Thank you for inviting me here.
I'm also just want to thank you to come on this podcast, because this Mars topic is one of my favorite, and I didn't get any chance to talk about this planet with anyone. But yes, really thanks to you too. Really thanks to you for just letting me just talk to you about this planet Mars, and we all are really excited for the future of Mars. And let's just end the whole thing here with a quote of Elon Musk, and it clearly shows how much he loves the planet Mars. And it is, he says like this: "I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact." And it clearly shows that
I love that quote. Yeah.
it clearly shows that he want to just die on Mars, and it clearly shows his love towards it. And this quote is sounding like this, that he have just fixed that he have just made a decision that he will die on Mars. And we don't know what's going to be happen with his life, but yes, we just hope that his dream gets successful.
Yes, I hope that dream is definitely fulfilled for him, and for many other people too. Who I know, there are many of us who are crazy enough to want to go to Mars, and I would like to share the rallying call of the Mars Society, On to Mars.
Really, on to Mars. I'm very much excited for all these things, especially for Mars. It's going to be great.
It will be. All right. Thank you very much, Viraj, and have a great night.
Thank you, Jim. It was really fun to talk with you. Really, thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.